Good evening, everyone. This is day 1105. I believe it is 1105. Thank you so much for coming on. Let me log on to Facebook, make sure everything is working. And after 1105 days, of course, Richard just didn't go missing. He didn't just walk away. That's really a smear campaign. I really believe that's a smear campaign at this point. Um, it is so crazy. Okay, there I am. Seems everything is working. Can you hear me? Yep. Okay, so if you have any questions, I will be glad to answer them. I can see everything. Thank you so much for coming on. Um, it's it's been a wowzer, hasn't it? It's been uh, we've got to fight like hell. We've got to fight like hell for justice for Richard. Okay. Um, the what we're up against is seems really big. You know, from the beginning of this, I was told many, many times that you can't fight the institution. Fight means fight for justice, right? Get the right answers, get transparency, get Richard's CPS complaints, find out who are the witnesses, what are the testimonies, where are his personal items, what is the truth behind his disappearance, um, where is he, right? Where is he? Um, what about other things going on at Fort Bliss? What kind of environment did he find himself in? Who was he allowed to have contact with that would do him harm? That would do him harm and would be up to no good and would create a environment of crime and um, I would say unhealthy living environment, right? And so it is very okay. So we're now working really hard. People have told us you just can't go up against um, the military, the Department of Justice, the FBI, the El Paso Police Department, um, the 15 plus agencies, right? The CID Quantico. You cannot fight like hell for your son and get anywhere. Um, and, I just, Rob and we saw that it was this big giant in front of us. But we know that they are nothing, that they are nothing to God. They are just, God could just, and they'll fall over because they've built their house of cards on sand, on pedophilia, on drug deals, on hurting each other, patterns of misconduct, patterns of malice, patterns of abuse. And, that's just a house of cards on sand. And did Richard have to pay the ultimate price because of that house of cards being allowed to be built on Fort Bliss? Right? Shoddy construction. We all complain about shoddy construction. Well, the environment there, the atmosphere there was allowed to be shoddy construction. And it wasn't just Richard who had to pay the ultimate price. It was many others. Many others. And many maybe have walked away alive, but their soul has been damaged, injured. I remember telling Jay Paulin, the first sergeant, the former first sergeant, your words are injurious, right? Your attitude, injurious. They do injury. And this is this house of cards that the carelessness towards children that are being abused, about members that have taken advantage of our system, have no regard for the oaths that they have taken, no regard for the duty of their positions, and they have not reported criminal activity and fraud, waste, and abuse in order to protect the people of the community and our most valuable assets, our soldiers that come at a very young age, and they're just so excited. I remember first seeing, of course I knew Richard was excited, but I saw that video of Asia Graham, and I was like, oh my gosh, she was so excited about joining. You know, you could just feel the energy in her watching that video. And step by step, they destroyed her. They destroyed her. They did not protect her. They injured her. And she ended up dying in a very horrible way in the barracks. After being sexually assaulted and retaliated against, treated badly. So, yeah, and it wasn't until after she died that the Army was forced, they were pressured, they were driven. That's the way that Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe would say, we have to be driven to do the right thing, right? We have to be driven. They won't just have esprit de corps. They won't just have the Medal of Honor ethos. They have to be driven to it. And that's just not right. So I want to talk tonight about Park University and Fort Hood. Fort Bliss, Fort Hood. Oh my gosh, Fort Hood's on my mind. I've been researching a little bit about what was going on at Fort Hood. Major General Donna Martin at the time, before they did this Vanessa Guillen changes the absent soldier flow chart and, changed the name of Fort Hood to Fort Cavazos, created this other CID, with Director Ford. And this Lalani Hart notarized criminal complaint affidavit that is so criminal in so many ways. I put out an alert, right? An alert. Because we have intel coming out of Fort Bliss now. People are getting sick and tired of the corruption and the compromise inside of our institutions that should be working for us, but they're using taxpayers' money um, at the bidding of foreign and domestic enemies. And, that's pretty criminal. That's pretty criminal. And I think a lot of people, because, it just didn't happen overnight. When things happen overnight, then you will have, uh, you know, a lot more people standing up to the criminality, to the corruption. But when things creep in, it's a really good military maneuver, asymmetric warfare tactic to creep things in, death by 1,000 cuts. That's another way to say it, is because with every little creeping in, we tend to tolerate and adapt. And by tolerating and adapt, we become part of it. And as it snowballs into a criminal syndicate, and I would say this about all my experiences during the Dritte Reich. You have the Weimar Republic, and I'm going to put all this together, so bear with me. But you have the Weimar Republic, where they had inflation that was just hyper. It's called hyperinflation, where they actually had to bring wheelbarrows full of money to the bakery and pray that they had enough, because the inflation was happening so quickly that they ended up like wallpapering their house with the money or burning it in the furnace. It was worth more burnt than it was to buy any goods. And so the stores took everything off of the shelves, and they didn't have anything because they had to take the stuff off the shelves, because with the hyperinflation came a lot of bullies, came a lot of shoplifting, and those gangs that come in and just raid your store and leave. That's not something new to our time. My Oma told me that was happening um, during her youth, because of the poorly ran government that created the after effects of World War I on Germany, that created a class of thugs. The young the young guys couldn't get jobs, and they just became thugs. And when Hitler came in, he created the Hitler Youth. This was a creeping in, right? A creeping in of evil, because everyone was like, oh, thank God, because now I can walk down the street without being afraid of getting jumped or raped or whatever, assaulted. And, he also brought in the Reichsmark. This was a creeping in, because then he had control over money. Um, and uh, it produced all the stores without the thugs, and now they had a money that they wanted, a currency, I should say, a currency that they wanted, would put overnight, my Oma told me, overnight, the shelves were full and people could go and buy things. Um, so that became a trust. Then a trust in him, like, oh wow, he got the thugs off the street. Um, we have now money, we have now items in the shop, and then he put forth this health program. Like, you had to do all this exercising and stuff, and people started disappearing that weren't healthy. Um, but people looked the other way. People looked the other way, um, because now they had money, now they had items, now and then he also put in the Autobahn, and the Autobahn cut through people's property and stuff like that. Um, Also going through Parmesan's, he cut down these big chestnut trees to put forth the road. But people were so glad to have those road works as jobs, you know, so they overlooked other things. And I think that's a, normal thing. Not Life is not perfect, so we always have to overlook things, and move forward. But what it did is it caused a following. And if you look at any of the videos during that time, he had a major following, and he took advantage of that. And I think that's what happened with the 44 four-star generals. They knew they had a major following. How many people have you heard don't want to salute the 44 four-star generals? I mean, nobody. Nobody. They all get the respect, and anytime they need any money, we give it to them. And we say thank you for your service, and we give them extra privileges. We even give them extra benefits. And, but they have forgotten. And I hope that I'm not insulting anyone to make this comparison. I'm making the comparison about the environment and the development in that, and to Fort Bliss. To Fort Bliss. Because if you have a veteran that works at the VA that determines service members' disability benefits, he has enormous power. Enormous power. And why do they have someone determining if you get your disability benefits without proper oversight, and someone that's from that area for a long time? I don't know. I think there needs to be some kind of protection in that, because my thinking is there's something fishy going on there. Because do not tell me that you have years and years of history of sexual deviancy, sexual abuse, child pornography, illegal weapons purchasing. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Something's going on with the immigration status. Something's going on with a lot of other issues that I have question with while reading this criminal affidavit, complaint affidavit by Leilani Hart. Where is the oversight? Do not tell me you have that many friends, that much history, and nobody knows? Everybody just allows it to happen? Everybody is just comfortable with pedophilia? Because I'm hearing that it's everywhere. That this is nothing new. Well, it was something new for Richard. It's something new for our family. That is not how we move. That is not how we live. And we can't stand to the side while other people are taking advantage of children. And not just that, but abusing the system. Abusing the system and knowing how to play the system. And that becomes like a puzzle, that if you solve the puzzle, you're celebrating, right? The fraud, waste, and abuse. And I'm connecting dots here. I'm not talking about the regular person trying to make their appointments, trying to make their medical appointments, trying to go and see James Hart to get their disability for the proper reasons. I'm saying there is corruption there. There is seemingly corruption there. And there's power there. Absolutely, there's power there. Because not only do you have the allegations, this long history of allegations with James Hart, but you have at Park University, for one, a long history of allegations with Leilani Hart, who, that's really not her name. She has another name that I looked up, and Iolanthia, I think it is. Iolanthia. Um, and, why is she not using her real name? Maybe that's her nickname, Leilani. Maybe it's easy. I know with my Korean friends, of course, with my Korean son-in-law, they will pick a Western name. Maybe Leilani is easy. But just for people to know, that is not, I don't think that's her. Leilani is just a name she picked. So that's not her legal name. I don't believe so. So maybe I'm wrong. She can tell me if I'm wrong, but that's not what I'm getting in the documentation. So, and I think we need to point that out because we have been under assault by people that don't like to use their real name, that don't like to tell, expose who they are. And they seem to have all this information, and yet the CID hasn't told us that these people have come forward and given the information. So, and we've debunked what they have said. So it's really a smear campaign. It really is asymmetric warfare tactics, military operations, because, and I say military operations because we traced the numbers, and the numbers traced to government operations such as Santa Clara, California, where they were manipulating social media accounts and banning people and shadow banning posts and things like this. That was in a congressional hearing, and I just went, oh my gosh, now I know why it led to Santa Clara, California, Stanford University. They were a big part of that, trying to control the narrative on social media. And then, of course, one of the numbers went to NATO, one of the numbers went to an embassy, and embassies where the FBI is, and another number went to the White House. So I posted those on, and I turned them in, and never have we received an explanation to those locations. And so I call it the asymmetric warfare tactics of military operations that has been used against us. And you see that they do that to anyone that threatens to expose the criminal syndicate, really. And in this case, it's very, very serious because you have James Hart being accused of the most horrific things. And where is the call for Leilani to be arrested if those were, because they were notarized, y'all. That was a sworn affidavit. A sworn affidavit, and we talked to the notary public, and he said yep, that's it. That's it. So for a notary to um, mark that, and he was kind of nervous too. Um, I felt really bad for him when I was talking to him. Very uncomfortable participant. That's what happens. That's what my Oma said. You're an uncomfortable participant. Which if you stay silent and you don't say anything, that's consent, and that's an uncomfortable participant. It's like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna go over here. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna stand up. And we're all very, very good at being uncomfortable participants. So with James Hart having these serious complaints about him, even illegal purchase of weapons, and there's no this is a document is there has to be an arrest there, right? There has to be. And I've been sent that over and over. But what is so shocking about all of this, and I really want to stress this tonight, what is so shocking about this is that this report was part of Richard's file. It's part of Richard's file. Okay, and we know that Richard's file has been tampered with, right? We know we have another complaint saying that Leilani Hart tampered with the file. Well, maybe this went into the file and she wanted it to come out of the file because she filed her complaint on the 22nd of July, 2020. Maybe she wanted to hide this, right? Maybe it's what made the connections between the CPS complaints that Richard was reporting, the CID complaints that he was reporting, and more and more. The IG were all over the barracks because of Halliday. And this affidavit, this notarized affidavit. You know, this is what I wrote. Rob and I this morning were like, we have to write something about this to let people know that this was part of Richard's file. It's been part of Richard's file, and they never told us. They never told us. They just smeared Richard. They were just trying to manipulate the case so that they could say that Richard committed suicide, and that really wasn't working for them, right? Their heart wasn't in on it because they just couldn't bring themselves to do it. Maybe they didn't have all the body parts, right? It would be too complicated. But, they didn't tell us. By the way, the CPS, your son was a whistleblower, and in the CPS complaints, we have it connected to the Hart family. And by the way, First Lieutenant Dallas Hart was Richard's platoon leader. Why don't they tell us these things? They needed to tell us. And we have it in Richard's file, this complaint of pedophilia, long history of pedophilia, long history of incest, long history of wrongdoings. That's been notarized by Leilani Hart. Leilani Hart is the one saying these things and notarizing it, wanting people to believe her. Why? Why did she feel it necessary to have it notarized? Well, because at Park University, she was making complaints that were false complaints. False complaints. We have 5 false complaints that she made over at Park University and was getting away with making these false complaints one right after the other, causing a lot of pain, a lot of injury to people, a lot of damage to the morale and the welfare and the security of Fort Bliss. And the problem is those those complaints apparently are no big deal to Park University. And we have now a record of them not caring about major allegations with proof and showing no interest in doing anything about it at Park University that gets free building, right? Taxpayer funded a building, air conditioned water, repairs, everything is on the taxpayer's dime. Landscaping, everything. And then they get really cushy because they have the soldiers that have the monies, that have the taxpayers funding them to even go to Park University. And all Park University has to do is make sure that they have oversight of their professors and the health and welfare and safety of their students. Keep their campus a place that is secure and healthy, right? And an atmosphere of learning. But that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening because Leilani Hart made false allegations of sexual assault. Did it get reported? We want to know. We want to know because when we reported, they showed zero interest. Zero interest. We have, matter of fact, I have a list here. Make sure. I do have a list here. I hate reading from my notes because, but I think I can, for the most part. Yeah. At Park University, a female professor was falsely accused, and Leilani Hart has so much weight there that even though the professor was falsely accused, she lost her job. Why is it that if the Hart, is this Fort Hart and not Fort Bliss? I'd like to know why there's this, what grip does the Hart family have on Fort Bliss that they can manipulate the university, they can manipulate the JAG, they can manipulate the command, they can manipulate the CID, they can manipulate the VA, they can manipulate what? They can manipulate the media. What do they have on them? Is it all just this sex cult? I mean, wow. Now I understand why prostitution has to be illegal. Because it just, if that's what's happening. If that's what's happening. Another is a judge, Judge Michelle Morales, and her husband, Leonard Morales. So our intel from within Fort Bliss said, look, they were falsely accused by Leilani Hart. Now, who would have to report all of this? We wanted to know. took some time out to do some investigative work, right? Because we've been made the chief investigators of our son's case. And this is important because the notarized affidavit, criminal complaint affidavit by Leilani Hart, that is super serious, was part of Richard's complaint, of Richard's file. It was part of Richard's file. So they are connected. So Dallas Hart, James Hart, and Leilani Hart, for the most part, those three are very connected. Why? Because they're on Fort Bliss. Why? Because First Lieutenant Dallas Hart was, in our estimation, because of our witness testimony, Dallas Hart was Richard's platoon leader. So this is very connected. So does it matter what happened with Leilani Hart? Is she credible? She had it notarized. But we're looking, did she make other complaints? We have put in an inquiry there at the El Paso Police Department to see if complaints were made against Leilani Hart. Because we want to know, did she retaliate? Is this a pattern of retaliation, that she will make all of these false allegations, false complaints against people and try to ruin their life? And I think it was the regional director, John Stewart. She put in an allegation of sexual harassment with him. He ended up, it was false. It was determined false. But, he wound up going and getting a job at a different university. And the thing is that on Fort Bliss and in El Paso, it was a cushy job. Regional director is a cushy job, y'all. I mean, you pretty much have a lot of people in your staff to do the work for you, and you just have to oversee. So that's a cushy job, high-paying job. And he decided, nope, Fort Bliss is more like Fort Hart. I'm out of here. I don't want to take another chance of getting I escaped. I escaped the claws of Leilani Hart, and so I want to get out of here while I can. I don't know. I don't know if that's how he felt. If he's listening, I hope he calls and gives his testimony about what happened. But I know that the allegations were false against him. So you have Michelle Morales and her husband, Leonard Morales, that suffered so much. And then, of course, John Stewart, the regional director, that suffered. Then you have the female professor that lost her job. She lost her job. And then, of course, there's another. And, so it's this history of retaliation and trying to destroy, this pattern of malice. So if she has this pattern to destroy people, and James Hart has a pattern to destroy people, and that evidence is part of Richard's file, and then we have a complaint that a witness overheard and was told that Leilani Hart hurt Richard, that Tavita Nusa hurt Richard, bodily harm, that First Lieutenant Dallas Hart was part of this. Then, we're obligated to look into this as his parents, right? And the shocking thing about this is that affidavit is part of Richard's file, and CID Soto never told us. We should have his file. The shocking thing is that the command never told us, because General McConville absolutely knew that it was part of Richard's file. Don't tell me he didn't know. And General Michael Garrett, Xavier Garrett, he knew. All he wanted to do was wish us a Merry Christmas. We're trying to look for our son. He's in retirement right now, and he needs to be recalled. He needs to be recalled, and I think an arrest for all of these key figures are absolutely necessary. For General McConville, James McConville, for General Michael Garrett, for, at the time, CID Lieutenant General Donna Martin. Now she's IG. She's IG. Who do we go for recourse in all of this? To Donna Martin, who absolutely, as a CID general at the time, Fort Hood, wouldn't tell us that Richard was a whistleblower, that Richard had a very shocking affidavit in his file that connected him to criminals, absolutely criminals, and that Leilani Hart had a long history of patterns of malice to make complaints, false complaints about people, trying to get even. If they're false complaints, she's trying to get even. She's trying to hurt people. So if that's part of her life, and Richard was a whistleblower on her deeds that might hurt her bottom line, then of course she has a history of hurting people. She thought it was okay to leave her friend's children with her pedophile, porn-watching husband. Child porn-watching husband. That tells her she better be quiet or he's going to kill her. But it's okay to leave my friend's children with him. He can babysit. And what's really shocking is that they have a business called Heart's Child Care. Heart's Child Care. Where is the oversight in all of this? I need to put up that picture. And then, of course, Judge Robert Shook, who ran to the exit to get out of Dodge quick, to get out of Fort Bliss quick, just recently, absolutely knew about this very important piece of evidence that connects motive and the ability to do Richard harm. Reason to do, well, that's all included in the motive. It needs to be a bigger word than just motive. But absolutely he knows. And then the Thomas Kane, and his office to secure Fort Bliss. That's what, the director of emergency services, the chief of the security of Fort Bliss, he absolutely knew all of what was going, because number one, he's dual-hatted, which makes him more culpable for crimes that he has committed. At Park University, he was a professor. He absolutely knew that Leilani Hart was causing trouble because he's a professor at Park University on Fort Bliss. He knew about the female professor that lost her job. He knew the situation with Judge Morales and Leonard, her husband Leonard, who's an attorney. He absolutely knows about that. And yet, there is no ban on Leilani Hart or James Hart from entering Fort Bliss. There absolutely should be. They polluted the whole atmosphere of Fort Bliss. They polluted Fort Bliss. And what was Dallas Hart doing? What was he doing? I don't know if everyone is ready to hear about what Dallas Hart was doing. I don't know if people are ready to hear it. It's very ugly, y'all. And you think that that affidavit is ugly? Y'all, it's the tip of the iceberg. It's the tip of the iceberg. Because think of it this way. All of this happening and is part of Richard's file, and it gets covered up. There's no oversight. There's no arrest. And you have the emergency intake center right there with all those children, and 85,000 of them are missing, are unaccounted for. I shouldn't say missing. I should say the proper term, unaccounted for. And they have tunnels there. They have tunnels running even from Park University to different areas. Even under the morgue is tunnels. They have tunnels. They have the means. What I'm saying is they have the means to be up to nefarious things. And that's why we need Major General Eisenhower to do his job. This is why we need to be vigilant. So that bad things don't happen. You know, bad things happen when good people do nothing, right? Bad things happen when good people do nothing. And I think a lot of children have been hurt. And absolutely, Richard has been hurt. And so you have implicated in this, these key figures, General McConville, General Garrett, Lieutenant General Martin, Lieutenant General Bernabe, Major General Eisenhower, CID Special Agent Soto, Judge Robert Shook, DES Thomas Kane. What about the District Attorney's Office? What about the Attorney General's Office? What about the FBI? The FBI. They had this information from the 22nd of July, 2020, and it was part of Richard's file, and they knew it. It has a direct connection to Richard's case, and they knew it. And I think that is so shocking. And can you believe it that El Paso Matters had Leilani Hart on as a credible witness? And we contacted them and we said, you know, she's not a credible witness. We have a lot of information. You need to recant that one, because the reason why we contacted them is because that hurts Richard's case. That's interfering in Richard's case. And they did. With that, they're reporting with her. So I have so much to tell you because, just think about this. Within all of that, there is sexual affairs, there is fraud, waste, and abuse, there is one crime after the next, and so I think we're coming to another turning point in this whole investigation into our son. And of course, we are the investigators, so we looked up what happened at Park University on Fort Bliss that allowed this to go on campus there. And, the person that we need to ask, her name is Anna Whitehead. Anna Whitehead. So if you're out there, Anna, you can call 941-677-0060. Team Find Richard Halliday. Reach out to Anna Whitehead and ask her. She would know if there were reports in, because, to get that funding, Anna Whitehead has to make sure that our soldiers are safe and secure on Park University ground there that is given to them free. No rent, no water money, no electrical money, no air conditioning money. They get it all, right? And all Anna has to do is make sure that she reports to the security, to Thomas Kane, right? Which is another conflict of interest because he's a professor there. So if there's a security issue and he's in charge of security on Park University, like we're told he's Park University security agent, and then he's also Fort Bliss security. And wait a minute, he might not want to give up his cushy job, so he doesn't want to say anything if something is bad. This is where the conflict of interest comes into play. So she would have to report. Who does Anna Whitehead have to report to? She would have to report to Thomas Kane, the chief of security of Fort Bliss, but he's a professor there. So she's over him. She's the boss of him, yet he's the DES. Does that make sense to see that conflict of interest? It's, I don't know how that works. His whole focus should be on the security of Fort Bliss. So Anna Whitehead, she would absolutely know if she put in the reports about Leilani Hart's false allegations and the mess that they caused. That would be her job. Anna Whitehead would have to do that. And because there is repeat of false allegations, these aren't real allegations. These are false allegations. And Leilani Hart is allowed to do them over and over and over again to the members of Park University. So, my feeling is they didn't do anything about it. And why do I feel that way? Because I just made contact and I told them a lot of information, my husband and I did, and they responded with zero interest. So if Park University is going to respond with zero interest when it comes to the safety and welfare and health, and also the quality of the education, okay, because some of the things we were reporting went against the quality, especially if you're afraid of being retaliated against or whatever, false allegations being smeared, like Richard was smeared, smeared, smeared. Well, this is what happened to Judge Morales and her husband. They were smeared. So, and we think that these unnamed people that have been smearing Richard could possibly be the Harts because they have a history of smearing. They they don't blink an eye to smear a judge. And I think that I don't know how Judge Michelle Morales felt about that, but I think that that was a horrible thing to live through because I know what we've been living through. And then her husband being smeared. And this is after watching another professor be smeared and losing their job for a false allegation. And then you have the regional director being falsely smeared and him going, well, I'm out of here. I mean, I don't know if that's why he left, but I don't know why he would leave a cushy job like a regional director for, El Paso, Fort Bliss, and El Paso City. I don't know why he'd want to leave unless he didn't like being falsely accused of sexual harassment, and especially in this kind of culture and atmosphere that can just destroy you. But they were false. See, and even false allegations, they know that they have a little sticking power. And this is why, over and over again, day in and day out, we have been coming on here day in and day out, letting people know that Richard was smeared unjustly and retaliated against unjustly, and that he was making CPS, Child Protective Service complaints, trying to protect young mothers, trying to protect young children, trying to protect the integrity of Fort Bliss, going to the CID, trying to protect its honor, trying to protect the military's honor, and he's getting smeared, falsely smeared. And it is within the law enforcement community that was smearing him. It was within, and Anthony Swafford gave us a heads up to that. And then since then, with our intel coming out of Fort Bliss and other places like Houston, believe it or not, they confirmed that the allegations were really aimed at the law enforcement community because they were trying to cover up what Richard, the murder of our son, and they wanted the law enforcement community to write him off and not even look in his direction, so that they could tamper with his file, get rid of evidence, tamper with evidence, hide his body wherever they're hiding his body, his remains, do whatever they needed to do, fiddle with all those designations, tamper with his belongings, and that so many of those law enforcement agents were looking the other way. They didn't even care. And that I don't give to Thomas Kane, because there's no way he could have been looking the other direction. Okay? Maybe Anthony Swafford, oh, well, yeah, I heard this. Okay, whatever. I have little kids. I don't want the likes of him around. But look, when you're in law enforcement, you have to care. And if you are the director of emergency services, you have to care and you have to do the right thing. You can't be out playing patty cakes. Okay? You can't be doing that. You can't be doing that. You can't be letting your family down. You can't be letting Fort Bliss down and the Army down and every soldier that walks onto that military installation. You can't let them down. You are their security. So he wasn't looking the other way. If he wasn't looking the other way, what does that mean? To me, it asks this question. Oh my gosh. What was he involved in? Did he tamper with surveillance footage? Did he stop the surveillance cameras from working? Did he erase surveillance footage? Did he mess with the gates and the guards at the gates? What did he participate? You know, this is just a logical progression of thought. What did he do on Fort Bliss that they could get away this long with the murder of my son? Right? And it smells of guilt because we wrote him a very kind letter. You know, we beg for help in every letter we write. We beg for help. And this was on the open records request. He should have called us right away. This is a very big case. And he should have called us right away, and he should have offered his help and his expertise to help us find our son. And what happened? He intentionally disregarded us. And we feel like he buried our request for an open record. So we had to rewrite it, take time out again, right? And readdress our opens record request to Patrick Dyer, the new DES. Because we were afraid, you see, that Thomas Kane was up to no good, because he is, and would not pass on our request to the new DES. That's the stuff we're dealing with right now. That's the stuff that we have dealt with General McConville, with General Garrett, with Lieutenant General Bernabe. God help Fort Cavazos right now, Fort Hood. God help them. Please pray for them. Because he knew about Leilani Hart's notarized, and we've known about it for a long time, right? I've been preparing everybody, and then we received it, and then we found out that this was part of this is part of Richard's file. This is something very, very important. Very important. Richard's investigation, the investigation into Richard's file did not begin with Richard's murder. Right? It did not begin with that. It began way before that. They had a file on him because of his CPS complaints, because of his CID complaints, because they had it way before he was murdered on the 23rd of July, 2020. And so the date of the 22nd of July, 2020, that is notarized on Leilani's affidavit is even more curious when you know that this was in the midst of everything. His case, I have to repeat myself, his case, the investigation into Richard started before he was murdered. Way before. They had a file on him. And so this affidavit that El Paso Matters now knows that Leilani Hart is not credible. If they don't know that she's not credible by now, because of all of the false allegations that she made at Park University, they knew that. Come on, they don't do investigative work? They do. Miss Kercherga is this big award-winning reporter, investigative reporter. Of course they knew that Leilani Hart was not credible. So what's going on? What's going on that even El Paso Matters feels like they're in the pocket of somebody that doesn't want this to get out what's in the CPS complaint, the connection with the Harts, the murder of Richard, what was in the CID complaints. Because you see, as parents of Richard at this point, 1,105 days, we should have Richard's file. We should know everything about Richard. We should have all of that. But this is all shrouded in secrecy, secrecy, hiding, secrecy, fear, fear, hiding, secrecy, fear, fear, and retirements. Let me exit. Let me retire. Let me leave here. You know, that's what this is. And that smells guilty. And why did Thomas Kane just retire too? I mean, he left with just such a dirty reputation now. Instead of doing what is right and leaving on good terms. I don't know. I wouldn't want to be haunted not every night. Maybe he's not haunted. I don't think he's that bad of a guy that he doesn't have a conscience. I don't know. All right, so I just want to list off a little bit about Park University. And I really want to reach out to the director. What is her name? The director. I wrote it down when I researched. Director of Academic Affairs. Anna Whitehead. So I know that because I love education, this is my passion, is education. I know that she's obligated, right, to document everything. She's obligated. So if there's professors up to no good, if there is students that are up to no good, she has to document that. I mean, I can't go and do my reports without documenting. When I had a classroom and I wanted to put a student ahead because they were just moving along so beautifully, I had to document even that. Look at this. What's going on here? This is wonderful. This is beautiful. Let's move them ahead. And if I wanted to keep a student behind, I had to document that too. Look, they need a little bit more time to mature. It's okay. And I never, I spent a lot of time documenting that, and I never had one parent that took the advice of keeping their child back. And I thought that was so sad, because why would you want to have your child be always struggling and at the bottom of the class when you just wait 1 year, 1 year, one time, and they will be in the middle or the above the top of the class for the rest of their life, right? I never understood that. Just keep them back 1 year, one time, and I bet you they will just shoot up. They will do well, and they won't be stressed every year, every year. I don't know. Anyway, um, so back to Park University. Anna Whitehead is a huge player there. Of course, the Thomas Kane being a professor there, and this conflict of interest with him, and then him being up to no good. And then, of course, Leilani Hart, a student at Park University. But when she made her complaints, I know 3 of them, she was not a student. Okay. So this is what my intel from the inside of FtBliss is telling me. And, where are the reports? It absolutely has to do with our son. You're going to find that out. But Park University, it's clear that they are neck deep in our son's case. Yeah. Unfortunately. This is, because we have this grooming of a culture to injure. And Park University went along with it. And absolutely, for a school, they cannot do that. For a university, they cannot do that. And with their contract with the United States Army, they can't do that. Okay, if you have any questions, thank you, Anicia. Thank you so much. Good evening, Danielle. Thank you so much. Using the system for evil. They're pros at using the system, abusing the system, fraud, waste, and abuse. Shared to many groups. Thank you. Thank you. Because, you see the connection now. The connection. Absolutely, there is a connection now between the Hart family, that affidavit, that notarized criminal complaint affidavit, and Richard, what happened to Richard, his disappearance, because we also have a witness that witnessed that Leilani Hart hurt Richard, that they tampered with the file, that they tampered with evidence, and that Tavita Nusa did the same. It was a confession of bodily harm. Okay. Did Richard ever attend classes at Park University? That's a good question. And we'll get back to you on that one. El Paso Matters. Yeah, that's a good question. El Paso Matters have had tons of information they could have used to expose corruption, cover up, waste, fraud, and abuse for years. They opted to not report. They bow down to the oligarchs and rich folks bias reporting, if you ask me. They have always leaned Democratic. Bob knows I will never bow down to anyone. Okay, thank you, Deliris, for that. So, thank you, everybody. Here we are burning the midnight oil again. And I just really appreciate it so much for coming on night after night after night. Um, but every day is new things. And today's breaking, just connecting Richard's file with this affidavit, with what in the world was going on with Miss Korcherga and El Paso Matters, what was going on with them, you know, and why haven't they called, you know? I mean, I talked to them and weren't interested at all in Richard's. Why is Richard's case like untouchable for these media and for the command? The command is afraid. They're lockstepping to this cover up. I mean, absolutely. Sean Bernabe is culpable, and Donna Martin, and McConville, and Garrett, and Eisenhower. Soto, the Judge Shook, Thomas Kane. And what about the DA and the I mean, that's the AG. Okay, let's stick with Fort Bliss, right? Because this can get so convoluted. But they absolutely knew. They absolutely knew that this was all connected. And they didn't tell us. A pattern of misinformation, a pattern of secrets. I've got a secret, I've got a secret, I've got a secret. Well, that's stinky. That means there's a pattern of cover up here. That means there's a pattern of criminal activity here. That's what that means. And that's what there is. And so I think today was a huge day. And I just want to thank everyone for sticking with us for so long, 1,105 days. And keep praying. Keep praying for us. And let's move forward and find out what happened to Richard, find him, get his remains, and hold these people accountable for, look, they need to be held accountable. They cannot get away with this. You know, they cannot get away with this. Because it's not just Richard. It's not just Richard. I've seen so many shaky Jakes. Shaky Jakes. They're afraid. They're being abused. And we can't forget about Asia Graham. We can't forget about all the other soldiers. So we need to fight like hell. Right? Didn't they say that on news yesterday? That we're not, or no, in the, what was it? In the courts. That you're not allowed to use that metaphor because that means you mean violent. No. I'm talking about day in and day out. Researching, exposing, putting together all this intel that we're getting in, and writing letters and driving them to do the right thing, driving our system to do the right thing, and holding those that do not want to do what the American taxpayers are paying them to do, to hold them accountable, to get them out of there, so that we can get those that want to defend the Constitution, want to help and care for our soldiers that volunteer, that they will do the job. That they will do the job. And let's pray for Patrick Dyer, who's the new DES, that he will do his job. He will grant us our request of an open records. Look into them. Let's look into these records. Now, we know that the records have been tampered with. We know that video has been tampered with. We know that evidence has been tampered with. Richard's personal items were absolutely given to us in such a messy way. We know that things were not done to standard operating procedure. Even to that level, it was not done. And we're talking about they knew. They knew. And now Park University has a decision to make. Are they going to do the right thing for all their students? Or are they going to make a backroom deal of corruption? Because it seems to me that there's that simple choice. So, all right, everyone, thank you so much, and I will be back tomorrow, God willing. Thank you so much. And as we get over the target, you know, the retaliation is going to be there because whatever string he pulled on, it had to be a big string, a long string with a lot of money behind it. It had to be with, really bad criminal things. Um, because the level of cover up in this is just hard to believe, but it's there. It's there. It's it is what it is. And so keep praying for that. And I just wanted to make you aware that you're going to see some smear campaigns and that. And I hope um, that you'll understand what's going on. Okay. God bless you.